Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to Synchronicity Web TV. I am your host, Nadiya Shah, and this is your moment of synchronicity. Well, I'm so excited to celebrate with you today, Jill Loftis. I know you've seen Jill on my channel before, probably quite a bit on my channel because she really is one of my favorite astrologers out there. I love how she presents astrology. I love the wisdom that she brings, and I know so many of you resonate with how she presents astrology to you all out there. And it is Jill that is coming to Synchronicity University as part of the September 2024 speaker series, which is focusing on home. And Jill is going to focus on the fourth house. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. So Jill, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Nadiya, for your generosity of sharing your platform and also for all the wisdom that you share. And I'm really excited about this topic.
Yeah, I just love and have loved watching you grow and share more and more. And of course, the ways in which you've stepped in for me and my channel. You've stepped in at Synchronicity University before. And so how lovely now that you are well scheduled. You are going to be here. We know that you're going to be here, and to have you as part of this, first time we're really doing a focused speaker series. So before it was like, speakers, whatever they want to teach, we do. This time we were like, hey, let's set some intention behind it. And the focus being on home, and you're bringing that understanding of the fourth house. So why don't we just jump right in? Because I just want people to see how brilliant you are. And like I said, people have seen you on my channel. They know what amazing energy you bring. Tell me a little bit about how you understand the fourth house.
Yes, well, I love the idea of the fourth house as being not just your home, but your emotional home, your foundation, and really exploring not only what that means from your childhood or your upbringing and things like that that are so fundamental in the construction of your attitude towards life and your experiences, but also I'm a good Taurus, and so I often think of the astrological chart as kind of like being a garden, right? And so I think of that fourth house as really being the soil, like the very base, the foundation, what you put into that, and finding the right environment. If you plant, here in Southwestern Virginia, if you plant your tomatoes in January, you're going to feel like you're not a very successful farmer. But if you plant them in May, you're going to grow some amazing tomatoes, right? And I feel like that fourth house really instructs us about how to plant our garden.
Wow. I've always thought of the fourth house as the foundation of the chart. And it makes sense because it is that sense of planting, right? Like what takes root in the fourth house that you're talking about when you create that analogy to a garden.
Yes. And, just even the idea of as a plant grows up towards the sun, it also equally grows down into the soil. And so it being kind of like the midnight of the chart, right? And the base. And I always think also too of like even kind of sayings that we have, like things are going to be on the upswing. They come through and the fourth house, and then they're on the upswing, right? It's just things begin to look up, move up. It's so important and so foundational. And I've found as an astrologer as well that it's so revealing. It's one of those moments when you're looking at someone's chart and you think, I have to approach this tenderly because I see what this person's been through. And I feel like that acknowledgement is one of the priceless things that you can offer one of your clients by realizing, wow, like, okay, that was formative. I learned from that. It wasn't punishment. It was something I needed to go through in order to create certain strengths or skills for my future. So, yeah.
And it's very validating to people, I think, when they come to an astrologer. And I mean, as much as they want to know what's going to happen, right? That's a huge reason that your regular lay person normally visits an astrologer. They want to know everything's going to be okay. They want to know what's going to happen. But when we as astrologers start with what has been, what was, where they are now, these become really powerful ways to forge connections with the client, with the chart as well. But it also helps establish this trust, this relationship that can be really powerful when you start with the past and lead that into the present before you move forward to what is to be.
Absolutely. It's almost, at least for me personally, in my experience with astrology, it's like, it's kind of like when you go to get glasses, and the ophthalmologist is moving them about, can you see clearly now? Can you see clearly now? And you look back at some of these experience or these relationships, and you can bring the wisdom of your maturity to look at them. And then all of a sudden they come into focus. And that way, maybe you can bless them and let them go a little easier, or not get hung up on it. I mean, because you can really fall into those holes and those patterns. So I think understanding what's going on in your fourth house, how it's influenced by the sign, by the ruler of that sign, and where that is placed in your chart. And then even just, touching in on the moon, because that's, the fourth house is that interlink parent, that formative connection that really teaches us so much about relationships. And it can help us to understand why we do what we do, and repattern things if we're not happy with the results.
Wow, repattern things. What do you mean by that? Can you explain that a little bit?
So when I look at astrological charts or tendencies, I often look at it, and you don't want to be looking at things. It's not like, oh, that's a bad aspect or that's a good aspect, because it's all just formative, right? It's all just, it's either strengthening you or kind of making you choose how you're going to develop in that way. And so when I look at it repatterning, it's like, oh, well, in the past I reacted this way, and that is my tendency. And then once you understand why you react that way, and I think the astrology is, that's, for me, it's the best possible way to understand. Oh, that's why I do that. It gets past this whole like, oh, well, my mother did it, so I did it too, or it's in the DNA. There's nothing I can do about it. It's like, no, you can make a different choice. You can repattern the karmic patterns by making a different choice and reacting differently. It's not that it'll go away. That's part of the other thing too. It's like cycles. It's not like, oh, check that off the list, I'm moving on in my life. It'll happen again. So then when you identify those patterns, then you can say, here's that intersection again. Like a square, right? It's that square. I've got to turn this way this time versus the other way.
Yeah, it's like the difference between being on automatic and just responding to life. And the whole reason we cultivate self knowledge is so that we can make different choices. We can decide how we want to respond rather than just unconsciously sort of letting life and others push buttons. And then, we just respond, react to any stimuli thrown our way. And it's so interesting because you used the phrase well rooted, and that's what we've been talking about in many ways so far, right? It's those roots, and they run so deep, and we don't always realize how much of the choices we make are because of those very deep roots. But how fortunate that we get to decide that through our own awareness, through our perception, through the work that we might do on ourselves, we get to decide how we're going to interpret those roots so that they at least help us to make choices that move us, onward and upward, as you said, towards the sun in the direction that we desire. You mentioned earlier about this sense of rising that happens. And yeah, that's what happens. Planets moving through the chart, they get to the foundation of the chart. And then after that, after the fourth house, they're just going up, up, up towards the midheaven, right? They're traveling on the western side of the chart upwards. And so how fascinating that it really is, that return to the foundation that happens again and again, because we'll always go around and around the chart. But it's every time we go around, whether it's a lunar cycle every 28 and a half days, solar cycle every year, right? Every year we get a chance to revisit so many areas of life, and how powerful it is to revisit the past so that you don't have to repeat the things you don't want to repeat anymore.
Absolutely. It's really deciding. I often tell clients, is it baggage or is it luggage? Is it something you want to take with you or is it something weighing you down? And so I think the fourth house is kind of where you sort some of those things out, but also you sort out what you need. And we often look outside of ourselves for happiness or answers or fulfillment. And we do that for a while. And eventually we realize, hey, there's a common denominator here, and that's me. What, so what makes me feel stable? What kind of home life do I need? I know you travel, you have a beautiful vagabond lifestyle, and that works marvelously for you, and it's not going to work for everybody. And no one needs to feel judged or compared if they need, or really, to be in the same house for 30 years or something. That's wonderful. They just need to know that about themselves and create that environment for themselves and be honest with themselves about what it is that they need. Because I think that denial, it leads to making commitments they can't honor. It leads to going down the wrong direction for a really long time and trying to fight your way back to stability. So yeah, the fourth house is it's so important.
That's incredible to consider. Yeah, because like my parents are those types of people. Like they just want to be in one place. They're not traveling types. And my dad, he didn't always get it. Like he didn't get why I am. And he would call me vagabond. Exactly. But, I have a Sagittarius moon. I'm at home in airports. I love being in airplanes. I love traveling with my things and having everything in little pouches and everything kind of perfectly organized. And it makes me so happy. And so the last time I was home, my dad sort of said, well, I'll say this, you really live. I was like, yeah, Dad, I do. I really live. But what that means different things to different people. Right? It really does. I know I have an uncle who has a cottage and he loves his cottage. Every weekend he's out at the cottage and he's working on the cottage. And that is him really living, right? We all need different things to feel at home, but ultimately what home is such an important thing to define for ourselves. I think it's so human, right? To understand our fourth house when we think of it as astrologers. It's like we know ourselves by understanding home and where we've been and what home is going to mean for us in this lifetime.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's an adorable children's book called Toot and Puddle and Their Best Friends. And one is a world traveler and the other one only adventures at home. And it's an adorable depiction. And they miss each other when they're apart, but they enjoy their time when they're together. And it's this embracing of this idea that you can be who you actually are, which is such a vital thing. I think there's so much comparison and judgment. And, as young people, of course, we try different things on, but to understand these fundamentals kind of gives us a little bit of a head start of understanding what it is we do need to thrive and what does make us feel safe. And that safety, that's the fourth house.
Wow. Toot and Puddle. I'm going to look that up. I have a feeling adorable. I'm going to feel it. Okay.
It's adorable.
So Jill, how do you feel about, maybe we can give people some insights into their own chart very quickly. Maybe just throw a few key words at people. How do you feel about going through, well, I want to say planets in the fourth, right? Just very quickly, again, just a few key words. We can go through each of the planets and what people need to understand if they have natal, like moon in the fourth, for example. We can start there. Do you feel like you want to jump in? I know I'm throwing this at you out of nowhere. I know you can.
No, of course.
You're so brilliant. I knew you could. So let's do it. And really, like everybody out there, I did not arrange this in advance. I didn't say to Jill, hey, I'm going to do this. No, I'm just right now, like off the top of my head, let's throw planets out there. And before we jump into that, let me just remind everybody once again, Jill is part of the September 2024 speaker series. As this publishes, you've got a little time left to choose your tuition rate. Our world famous choose your tuition rate is always just $5 a class to learn from Jill and these other incredible astrologers. So let's jump in here. Jill, moon. What do people need to understand who have natal moon in the fourth house?
Natal moon in the fourth, you are going to absorb your environment. Your environment is so vital to you. And so it's very important that the energy is clean, that it's a place that you feel safe. You'll really absorb the energies of people who are there, you know. So especially if you, as a young person, you would have really been feeling what was going on in your household. It's also where it loves to be. It's usually happy there. Of course, what sign is on that house cusp will, of course, influence that. But yeah, the moon in the fourth really heightens that intuition.
Wow. Sun in the fourth.
The sun in the fourth, well, that's going to be, really this kind of desire often to have a family, to be a little bit more family oriented, to be a little bit more about someone who creates a home or a foundation. But it also, it's at the bottom of the chart, and it's sometimes the fourth house is mysteriously called the end of things. And so I would say someone with the sun in the fourth will have had a lot of endings, a lot of initiations to new experiences and new ways of being. And so I would imagine there would be many, many versions of them.
Mercury.
So Mercury in the fourth gives this desire to be heard in the home or really want to communicate well. And so I would imagine that upbringing would be really filled with ideas, or that would be the desire, to have a house full of books and conversation and things like that. It could also bring a little bit of an introverted tendency to want to stay home and study or read up or learn versus, heading out to university or something.
Wow. And Venus.
Venus in the fourth is going to really need that safety, that security of love in the home. They're going to really want to, nurture, tend. They're going to need to have a beautiful home, and that doesn't mean opulence necessarily. It's really in alignment with whatever the sign would be, but they would need to love where they are. And also, I would think that they would really love family or feel this certain connection, whether it's to the family of origin or to invite others into their home.
Mars. Talk about a different energy now. We're going to jump from Venus to
Absolutely.
Mars. Yeah.
Right. I mean, Martian energy in the fourth, it's going to depend a lot of the sign, and it's going to depend a lot on how it's aspected, because Mars is the warrior. And of course, we need some Mars to get off the couch and do the things. It's our energy action planet, but it also can be a planet of conflict, of argument, of difficulty. And so a lot of it depends on the sign and the aspect.
Yeah. And the thing is, of course, all else being equal. So we should say that very clearly, all else being equal, the way that planet is aspected can change how it's experienced. The sign the planet is can change that experience. But Mars is the warrior. And so, yeah, that warrior self is summoned at home in some ways, and there can be wonderful ways that manifest, right? What are some wonderful ways that Mars in the fourth can manifest? Jill, tell me.
Oh, so I would see that as someone who really goes after the right environment for themselves. And they're really, they could be this just really like doing the home improvements themselves. Like, let's go, like, we're going to tear this wall out. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. They could also be someone who really sticks up for or stands up for their family or, people that they really care about. It's just more active.
Brilliant, brilliant, Jill. Jupiter.
Jupiter in the fourth, I find it often makes for people who are a little more worldly and don't necessarily need just, one set place. Often there's a lot of moves in the lifetime, but sometimes it's like the world is their home and they want to invite people in. They enjoy people from other countries and cultures and, more to the table and just really kind of an expansive attitude. They could also watch out that they don't spend too much on having a grand home or a bigger home, or again, sign aspect. Yeah.
Yeah. Uranus.
Saturn, don't forget Saturn.
Oh yes, Saturn. Oh my God. I'm sorry, Saturn. Please don't come get me, please. Oh goodness. Just before we started recording, I was telling you that Chiron, I'm having my Chiron return, but it's square my Saturn. And so, I have gotten a bit of a crash course. So yes, Saturn, please don't be mad at me. I didn't mean
Let's
to
say,
forget you. Saturn. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, Saturn in the fourth can be a little rough. It could be, again, it can be a difficulty or with a father figure, or it could also be the father figure is just really there for you. You know, it could really depend. Again, sign and aspect. Saturn in the fourth tends to bring more responsibility. It could have brought a little bit more heaviness, or even could have brought into the household someone who had melancholy or depression or things of that nature. So again, it has a lot to do with the aspects and things.
Yeah, it is. Saturn can be where you sacrifice, and sometimes sacrifice for family. It's the most natural thing. There's not necessarily something bad. It can actually be quite beautiful and poetic, and deepen those roots that much more, as you said. Okay, now let's get to the outer planets, Uranus.
Uranus, yeah. Uranus destabilizes things, right? So this could bring a lot of sudden moves, sudden shocking things happening within the household, growing up, disturbances. It could bring a more of an interest in bringing more technology into your home. Like you might be the first person with the big screen TV or something like that. But it could also make you want more freedom, because Uranian energy, it does not like to be limited. It really likes to break free. And it also could bring in that your home is quite unusual or quirky in some way, kind of an Aquarian vibe.
Neptune.
Neptune, I have found, at least in my practice, to be the most difficult planet in that fourth house. It tends to mean that there are secrets in the childhood. There are skeletons in the closet. It sometimes can reveal that there were patterns in the home that were disturbing or difficult. It often means that as a child, you were told one thing and your intuition was saying something else, and you may have disconnected from your intuition because of the things that were happening. And so it's a journey back to trusting your intuition and trusting the spiritual and the magical. That said, if it's beautifully aspected, your childhood could be spiritual and magical. Just unfortunately, in most of my practice, I've found people have just a little bit of a tricky relationship with childhood, maybe some issues there that they need to unpack and work through so that they can restabilize that energy, because Neptune is so nebulous, right?
And now we come to me, which is Pluto. Pluto in the fourth house. And
Pluto
it
in the
is an
fourth house.
active, it is like a, it's like the point of a kite, actually. It's part of a kite formation, and it just all points to that Pluto in the fourth. It blooms out. It is opposite Jupiter. It's in a grand trine with Sun and Mars. And yeah, it's just squaring the ascendant. Like, God help me. Tell me, tell me, Jill. Give me some good news.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're the expert. I always the lived experience is always the expert, but I would say Pluto in the fourth means you go through transformational phases that have to do with moves and changes, and that your own inner anchor, what stabilizes you, is in a constant death rebirth cycle, and so it's a lesson in detaching. It's a lesson in saying yes to things changing and letting go, but I'm sure there's a lot of goodbyes, but that means a lot of hellos as well. So Pluto could also bring very transformative experiences as a young person, or when something transits through there, it's just literally, it's the phoenix, right? Burn it to the ground and let's begin again. But that burning process, back to the soil metaphor, creates very rich soil from which you can plant amazing things. So yeah.
Wow. That's so beautifully put and very apt. I totally relate to that. And so, once again, everybody, you can see how brilliant Jill is, why she's one of my favorite astrologers out there, and why it is that she's actually coming back to Synchronicity University, this time as part of the September 2024 speaker series. You've got a little time left to choose your tuition rate. There's always just $5 a class from the time that this is publishing. And I know that you're going to see Jill again on my channel. She steps in for me when I reach out to her and I need her to. And I just feel so grateful, Jill, that we've connected and we remain connected in the ways in which you bless my work and my channel and have continually over the last few years. How lovely to see you grow, but also to have this connection with you through our shared love of astrology. So just thank you for all of it.
Well, and thank you, Nadiya. Thank you so much. Again, your generosity of spirit and gathering everybody together, it just really is, it's really unique and special. And I appreciate you and your wisdom. I've learned so much from you throughout the years.
Thank you, Jill. And thank you, everybody out there, for watching. Until we connect again, take care. Bye.